Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Buffalo Bills Maybe Next Year. The only podcast that could get a better deal for a court. Shut up, Frank. Wow, Tyrod Taylor got traded to the Browns, and it screwed up my whole head. My name is Frank.
I'm Scott.
Paul.
Yeah, I
I
don't
thought you
know.
were going to go with something like we've been trying to edge out one of the people on this podcast for pretty much a year, but they didn't really get the hint, so we finally just had to pull the trigger.
Right. Or after a long time, even though they didn't want Paul last time, we just traded Paul to Bills and Bears.
Yeah. there would have been a few ways we could have gone with it, but it's tough to be
But
witty
Frank
with the
did
news.
That's okay.
Look, we've been off for more than a month, largely because the New England Patriots lost the Super Bowl and everybody's brain broke a little. And nobody wanted to record a podcast until we were absolutely certain there was no way they could come out.
Right. I think the statute of limitations for Super Bowl reversals is a month. So I think we're good now.
We're a little, we're a little rusty, but we got some big Bills news, obviously, that you all already are aware of, I'm sure. But we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about some littler, smaller Bills news, and we're gonna try not to yawn during the podcast because this daylight savings time has really got me screwed up. Tyrod Taylor. That was another way I could have started the show, like the only podcast that gives you your hour back. Tyrod Taylor gets traded to the Cleveland Browns for their third round pick, the first pick in the third round. So many people are saying it's almost a second round pick, and that includes he will be traded before they pay his $6 million roster bonus. All of this will become official this week. But the details are out, and Tyrod has acknowledged this, and I suppose it's possible they could pull the plug, but I don't think so. I don't think they will. By many regards, a coup, for Brandon Beane, the general manager. But I want to get Scott's take on it first, who was probably the nearest and dearest to Tyrod Taylor on the podcast, which I'm not trying to, label you as like a Tyrod apologist, but I think you were making the most vociferous cases towards the end of his tenure here.
So I think I was, and I think I would speak for everyone when I say that we wish Tyrod the best of luck, regardless of how we felt about him at the end. He was obviously nothing but a professional his whole time here, including some very raw deals on a number of occasions. Obviously, the team never kind of got to where it, it's funny because it's like if he had gotten us to the playoffs 2 years prior, then he's probably still the quarterback almost, because it's like then that would have saved Rex Ryan's job probably, and Ryan would have kept him there, and that's all clearly like, probably that's all the Bills fans would have needed for some time. But on some level, by having McBean come in here, now they've set the bar at the Super Bowl, which, to be fair, is the right bar to set. And Tyrod clearly probably not a guy who, apart from your kind of 1 in a million Nick Foles, Case Keenum.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's no Nick Foles.
Yeah. Kind of situation. He's not a guy who's an elite kind of quarterback. They clearly want to go find that guy. They've been obviously putting that down for a while. I'm pleased that they obviously got a third rounder out of him. I think that's a tremendous job by Beane, and I continue to be impressed by his kind of wheeling and dealing and able to get more than what seemed to be market value for some of these guys. Admittedly, like the Darius trade kind of notwithstanding. So I'm pleased by that. I still am not 100% sure that this is the best thing to do, but it's very, very close. Like, it's like, I think I'm okay with it. And then I read like Joe Thomas, who's obviously a longtime Wisconsin guy and multiple all-pro kind of left tackle for the Browns. He's very excited about it. He thinks Tyrod's a really good quarterback and that they're going to do fine. So, and clearly someone who actually knows about football. So, it's kind of like and then I read that and I'm like, oh, geez, maybe we did. I don't know. So, but ultimately, like, he's going to Cleveland. He's not going to do a lot of damage to him to us there, provided that they, completely turn the team around by next season, which I can't imagine will be the thing. And yeah, ultimately, I'm not sure I could have talked myself into really committing to Tyrod indefinitely either. So given all that, I think it makes sense, and it was a good deal. So I'm not losing sleep over it.
Right, and there's a lot of good points there. And this reminds me that I did think of a great opening for this podcast right now, which would have been pretending the breaking news was that, per Ernie Johnson, the Buffalo Bills have just made their first NCAA tournament, as they did misannounce that as the Buffalo Bills instead of Buffalo Bulls. So, as Scott mentions, that, Joe Thomas thinks Browns are getting a good player. I think they're getting a good player. I don't think Tyrod is a terrible quarterback, but the way I feel about him today and as this season went on varies so differently than I felt, about him in late 2015 when he was doing all the things with his legs that he's doing now. But he was also dropping dimes to Sammy Watkins 50 yards downfield with a guy less than a step back, and he seemed to have lost some of that accuracy and not really progressed in the other areas as a passer that you would need. The defense did its job in the playoff game to hold Bortles under 100 yards. Tyrod couldn't rise to the occasion and play at the level that the team needed him to. And so that was the bar is the Super Bowl, as Scott said. And yes, you look over the last 30 years and you can point out that there has been a Nick Foles and a Trent Dilfer, an old Peyton Manning, a Doug Williams, and a Jeff Hostetler in the 80s and 90s, respectively. But one thing about all those guys is those are one-win Super Bowl guys. You're looking for someone who can get you to that game, year after year. You're looking for the next Brady. That's a high order because you're probably waiting 50 years if you're looking for the next Tom Brady. But you're looking for that guy like a Roethlisberger or a Rodgers, a Rivers, a Breeze, who keeps you in contention year after year. And it was quite obvious that Tyrod was not that guy. And that's what the team really needs. And I think it is a calculated risk. This team was already in danger of taking a step back this coming season, just by nature of the schedule is likely to be more difficult. You have the Eric Wood retirement. Kyle Williams' status is still up in the air. You're not going to be able to improve the level other teams are at because, we'll talk about dead money in a little bit. But, there's just a ton of dead. They were most in the league in dead money before the Tyrod trade. So you're going to have a lot of issues getting talent on the field. And then they pulled the trigger on this trade when the only quarterbacks on your roster are Nathan Peterman and Joe Webb. And we're considering Joe Webb a quarterback at this point. I'm not even sure if Joe's under contract. That's just a guess.
Well, he's a free agent.
Yeah, there we go. So they have Nathan Peterman under contract. So they make this move then. There's a lot of risk there. As we note, though, top of the third round, 65th overall pick, a better deal than they were going to get for someone who is not figuring into their long-term plans. They probably thought, yes, this is the deal we have to take. It unloads a big salary. It ends the question of, will Tyrod be the guy? You avoid the uncomfortable position of Tyrod now having to train his understudy, if you will, just looking over his shoulder all the time and waiting to be replaced, which sometimes can work, but often can cause problems on the team, cause divisions on the team. So now you probably end up bringing aboard a draft pick and a veteran who are both new to the team and are starting from the same square and have no preconceived spots with the Bills. Tyrod, for his part, I'm going to say Tyrod goes to the Browns and improves their record. I am going to say that is going to happen.
It'd be hard not to. Yeah.
That is my bold prediction for the day.
He's only got to get 2 wins.
Yeah, really one if he does
I guess
2.
Really one, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll shut up and we'll go back to Tyrod stuff. I've said that's my Tyrod part A.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he does the calculations of $10.4 million off the cap, $16 million in real money because, again, that bonus is going out. And I think the thing about the third round pick that's good is that, he was the Bills were known sellers, right? They were well-known sellers in this market. There was no hiding the fact that they didn't really want Taylor anymore. They had to sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a bluff, but they had to sort of play tough the week or two before, saying that they were fully planning on, paying him his roster bonus and keeping him on the roster if need be, and not cutting him. And maybe they would have cut him anyway. And so if somebody had called their bluff on that, but Cleveland chose not to, and there were allegedly a couple of teams looking to offer things, but nobody could beat a third round pick for, not just a player, but they didn't have to eat any of his salary for this year. So other than, I guess, what would be, dead money. The
The
Bills,
dead money, we should mention the dead money number. It is going to be per over the cap, which has already updated this, even though, as we've noted, the trade is not official until Wednesday. They could back out. It's going to be 7.64 million 2018 dead hit, but then zero after that.
Right.
So they take and in case for those of you wondering, 26.359 million in dead money now before spring and summer cuts and before they figure out the Eric Wood situation. So it looks like it's going to be a 30+ million year of dead money.
Yeah, it's a lot of dead money. And actually the salary cap space is going to be about $30 million. They say, although according to Buffalo Rumblings, where I'm reading this, that does not include Chris Ivory or Owa Odigozua. I can never say that name. Chris Ivory or Owa's numbers, since those have not yet been released for next year. But I think it was a good deal. And I think Cleveland gets something good out of it too. I think it's hard to pretend like Tyrod Taylor wasn't. As my friend texted me, Dave, who's a Browns fan, he said he said Tyrod Taylor is a competent quarterback, which easily makes him the best quarterback they've had in the last 20 years in Cleveland. And I think that really is. I think I would believe that. I think that's something
the last
that might be
quarterback to
true.
lead the Browns to the playoffs, if I recall correctly, a guy we all know and remember, Kelly Holcomb. So that's the Browns standard.
Yeah, I think I would take Tyrod Taylor over Kelly Holcomb any day. Robert Griffin, Josh McCown, Brian Hoyer, Jason Campbell. Jason Campbell was okay in Washington. Brandon Weeden, Colt McCoy, Brady Quinn, Derek Anderson, Charlie Fry, Trent Dilfer, Jeff Garcia, Kelly Holcomb, Tim Couch, Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, who turns out to be a pretty good coach.
We take him as a coach.
Vinny Testaverde. I think it's okay. So if you go back, then they weren't playing from 1996 to 1998. So Vinny Testaverde in 1995. I think I'd put Taylor on the Vinny Testaverde level in some ways. I don't know. Maybe end of his career, Vinny Testaverde. But I think that Cleveland gets a good asset back, especially while they add Jarvis Landry and to the mix, and they still have the top two of the top 4 picks in the draft. So I personally think that they're going to probably still draft a quarterback first overall. I don't think that they think Tyrod Taylor is a future quarterback for them. I think he's a now quarterback for them while they get their roster together. So you're right, Paul. We don't have to watch Tyrod Taylor train his replacement, but Cleveland seems to be pretty happy to do that too. I'd be really shocked if they didn't take, I guess the leading theory is Saquon Barkley and then maybe whatever quarterback's left at 4.
Right, they'll probably use pick 1 or pick 4 on a quarterback, but still a better situation for Tyrod because he's going to a team where he doesn't. The questions would be, when are you going to lose your starting job you've had here for 3 years? He'll be new to that situation just as the new guy is.
Right. It's pretty wild. So we that's where we are. Sorry, I just got a text message that makes no sense to me. Okay. Do we have any more thoughts on the Tyrod Taylor trade? Is there any other things going on here?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm trying to remember exactly where we were on our agenda because I've moved to other sites and I'm doing a lot of other things other than paying attention to you guys talk. But are we going to talk about whether or not we're going to actually get whether we're going to bring in someone else to train the replacement for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. The free agency for. Do we want to, Frank? What do you think? You are the leader of this pod at present. Do we wedge that in now because it's second?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think that the next. I think part of this conversation going forward after we talk, I think we should dispense with Chris Ivory and Vontae Davis and come back to it because really, if I'm being honest, the end of the agenda where we talk about free agency, the draft, and what's next, I can't imagine that's not all about quarterback anyway. So, or at least largely. So I think let's knock out the rest of the pro forma, and then we'll come back to it because I think that is juicy stuff. So the Bills signed Chris Ivory to a 2-year deal, and so that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of.
I don't know what we don't know what the contract is, right? So we don't know if it costs a lot of money or not. But
I did see the contract. It's not too prohibitive. He gets per game bonuses. His base salary is a mere million, but there are going to be a lot of bonuses. He'll likely be right around the 2.5 million mark this year, and bonuses likely to be earned in base salary. And then next year, same deal, pretty much. His cap number could be up to 3 million with a 1.5 base and then 1.5 million in what they call bonuses likely to be earned. And yes, those are the NFL categories. Bonuses likely to be earned and bonuses not likely to be earned. I don't know what they do with ones that are 50-50. Bonus might be earned, but the difference is if he doesn't hit bonuses not likely to be earned, those won't count against the cap until the year after they've hit. So it's a reasonable salary. They definitely needed to upgrade on Mike Tolbert. You can look at some of Ivory's numbers of the last couple of years and say, he seems to have taken a step back, but he didn't have the offensive line that he's going to have in Buffalo, so that's going to be very helpful to him, I would imagine. He also, might just be in a better situation overall, and it's tough based on the small sample size since he's left the Jets to determine how he's going to be. So for the amount spent and for a 2-year deal, and if he's terrible in the preseason, you can still get away with cutting him and just, what the hell, add more dead space. But it's not a terrible amount of dead space. So, you have that option. So I think you're looking at a position you need to upgrade behind LaShawn McCoy. This was the way to go. And then, of course, you can still attack it in the draft. It doesn't preclude you from doing that. I'd say my one negative that I have with this pickup, not the salary, not necessarily the person, but you get, again, a guy who has a different type of running style than McCoy. And I think that can throw off the line. And we saw that with Tolbert last year. Mike Tolbert was also – his issue was also that he was Mike Tolbert. So that was part of the problem. But I think you could use a guy who has more of McCoy's style for consistency. But if that's my biggest issue with the signing, I'm totally fine with bringing Chris Ivory aboard the team.
The one negative that I'm aware of on Chris Ivory is that when I was reading the Bill Barnwell analysis of this deal, he called Chris Ivory the worst backup running back in the league. So that's a little concerning. So in that sense, I kind of am concerned. I have watched Chris Ivory here and there over the years. He's had some decent games against us, but that's not a reason to pick up him as a running back because there are a lot of guys who did decent games against us. Ultimately,
Jay would be in the Hall of Fame right now.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, I think you were in a well, by the way. I walked. I'm not gonna freak out about a backup running back because ultimately it's a fairly easy position to come by. I think I am a little more concerned that
Scott. Oh, we lost Scott. We lost you for a minute there.
I think we still lost Scott.
A little more concerned by, and then we couldn't hear what Scott said.
Oh, here the mic's coming.
I hear the
back.
Breathing. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. You were a little concerned by, and then
did you get my Barnwell thing?
Yes, we got the Barnwell thing.
Okay, so anyway,
we got much of it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, so I'm a little concerned by the fact that this seems to be another McDermott thing where he finds a veteran who he kind of, I don't know if they've ever been on the same team. That may be a lie. But it seems like one of these things where they like these veteran guys who've been around the league a long time who probably, know how to be good in a meeting and pay attention. And that's their criteria for bringing them in. So it's a backup running back. I'm not going to freak out, but I'm not convinced that this is a great choice. I mean, he seems like a slightly faster Mike Tolbert, which is not saying a lot. So whatever. I'm not going to freak out, but there are probably better choices I'd be more excited about.
Yeah, I don't see that any place where they would have crossed over as a coach and player.
Okay.
Sean was in Philly, but Bean probably got a good look at him when Ivory was in New Orleans. So, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. They probably have identified him as a good culture player. # trust the process. Let's see. Vontae Davis, also a new bill. That was, I think, in February, end of February. We have signing bonus of $1.5 million, a base salary of $2.25 million. I think it's just this 1 year, though, right? It's a 1 year deal with one of those.
One of the prove it deals, as they call them.
Right.
So, yep.
Right. Which, sometimes you sign a guy to a prove it deal and he can't prove it. Sometimes you sign a prove it deal and he leaves. And then sometimes you get Richie Incognito on a prove it deal and, you restructure his deal and they stick around and they contribute as good players. So Davis was allowed, these guys were allowed to sign because they weren't like on active rosters at the end of the season, if I remember right. And that's kind of what the deal is. So he had toured a bunch of facilities as soon as he could, and Buffalo was his first stop, and they came back here. Davis, we started with Paul last time. Scott, do you have thoughts on the Vontae Davis signing? Or
I mean, I'm fine. I mean, I think he's kind of like a slightly better version of EJ Gaines, so I'm okay with it. I mean, a guy who's dinged up but not but has had some good playing when he's in there, has been very good. So he's obviously a little older than Gaines, and obviously Gaines knows the system well, but presumably McDermott is able to determine who knows this, like the difference between like what value Davis can provide above and beyond the what Gaines is in terms of knowing the system, and then after that it's just kind of rolling a dice on being healthy. So I'm okay with it. I think Vontae Davis is a good player.
Yeah, he only played in 5 games last year, unfortunately, but when he was healthy for Indianapolis, he was a very good player. And of course, in the earliest part of his career was in Miami. Paul.
Yep, I'd agree. It's right similar to the Ivory one Scott had mentioned. That Barnwell did rate him the worst backup running back. There is similarly a school of thought with Davis that he's older now by cornerback standards, that his best days, his Pro Bowl days, could be behind him. He did only play the 5 games last year before the injury got him, and then they just outright cut him. So, you certainly have to have concerns on that front. Yet, you also, again, low risk, high potential reward. It's like you said with Incognito, Frank. This is exactly the type of signing that could prove immensely valuable in this organization. With the signing last year of Gaines, for example, all right, let's bring this guy aboard. So, it wasn't a sign; they traded for him, but that really worked out. They had a good eye for people in the secondary. They had a great eye for the 2 safeties they've signed with Hyde and Poyer. I think you get Davis again. It's a $4.3 million deal. They take 3.5 in dead money if he can't get back to it, and they have to cut him. So reasonable, prove it type of deal. It likely means they won't re-sign EJ Gaines, but I wouldn't totally rule it out simply because maybe Gaines is expecting more than he'll get on the open market. I don't think that will happen. But if they can, say, draft cornerback with one of their picks, if they don't have to mortgage their entire early round to move up in the draft, all their early round picks to move up in the draft, that is, hopefully get some depth there. So I'm fine with this signing. I don't think it's going to be a beat the world sign, but if he can come in and be at least perform at the level of Gaines, but be in the game all the time, played 14 to 16 games versus the amount that Gaines played this past season, I think this was another good but not great signing. So for what you're going to get before the official free agency period of starts of people who are on NFL rosters, it's been a good pickup.
Okay. And we'll just mention, as I said, defensive end Owa Odigizua. That sound
right?
Yeah,
if you do it, I find I can do it if I do it syllable by syllable when I'm looking at it.
Odigizua. He played for the Giants, but did not finish the season. He's only played a total of 18 games. This is not the same type of signing as the other 2 guys. The belief, I think, is that he will be a camp kind of trying out to make the team at the end, just showing up. He's depth. He is decidedly depth, but he's only, was drafted in 2015. So maybe you can get a John McCargo, not McCargo, like one of those guys that signs with a different team and then starts to play better. Jerry Hughes.
Yeah, James Harrison's a good
James
example.
Harrison, right.
Yeah. That might be the extreme example of that would be awesome if he turns into James Harrison. But, there are plenty of those examples, of guys who can be contributors for other teams, for sure.
Any thoughts on him, Scott? Or
no, I got nothing.
You got nothing. All right. Good luck.
I don't think anyone has thoughts on it. I think you summed it up, Frank. Possible camp body, but he has a chance to make the team because they're thin in this area, and he's got good metrics, and he's a young player. So we'll see.
Well, the NFL Combine was last week, and even a little bit before that, we had Terry Pagula at the Combine, almost certainly watching the quarterbacks work out. We know the Bills met with a handful of quarterbacks. They probably met with some other people too. They hold the 21st and 22nd pick in the NFL draft. There are teams ahead of them that need quarterbacks, teams ahead of them that suddenly don't need quarterbacks. The Kirk Cousins is available. There's a lot of stuff going on. The Bills are adding picks. They're in position now to maybe shoot up the draft ladder all the way to 2, where the Giants are. I got no clue. But for a clue, we should talk to Scott, who I am told, sources have told me that Scott did a little bit of math for us, doing some of the permutations in the draft pick value chart. So is this the original? Sorry, is this the original?
So I went to the Walter Camp draft value at walterfootball.com, the draft chart there.
Okay.
So I'm not going to claim that is the authoritative chart. I'm sure that there are a variety of better charts or different.
No, you kind of phased out again, Scott. Sorry.
Get to it then.
Okay.
So it's fairly easy to get to. So we're at if you start at 21, which is obviously our first round pick, you can get up all the way to 2 if you really want to just basically give away all your picks this year. And for the record, there are like out year picks that you can obviously add to this to make it somewhat simpler. I just kind of stuck with this year's picks. So if you give all of your picks to the Giants, basically, you can get that number 2 slot, which obviously gets you pretty much anybody. You get one of the top 2 QBs or either of the top 2 QBs if Cleveland goes Barkley first. So, which I think is not a great move. I love Saquon Barkley, but he's still a running back. It's a very tough position to take first overall. So I think there's a couple different roads to get you to 4. You can either do both of the 3rd round picks and both of the 2nd round picks. You can do your 1st round pick and both 3rds, or you can do both 1st round picks and
both 1st round picks and what? Oh.
Uh-oh. Lost Scott's mic again.
Just some terrible network issues.
Terrible. I apologize.
It is not you. It is a network issue. That's fine.
Why don't I try and get through this and log back out and log back in again?
Okay.
All right. So if you want to go to 5, you do your 2 firsts and your 1st third. But if you do your last third, it only gets you to 6. And then if you want to get to 7, you're going to do your 1st, and then you're going to do both 2nds, or 1/3 and the last 2nd, or just the 2 firsts. So sorry, that's 2 firsts or 2/3 in the last 2nd, or both 2nds. And then if you want to get to the mid rounds like 14 or 13 or 15, then you do either 2nd or both of the 3rds. So I would say if you're in the quarterback market, you kind of want to be in the top. I think you want to be in that top 6, top 7 kind of area. I don't have the teams in front of me. Maybe Frank or somebody can pull it up while I log back in.
Yeah, you have.
So why don't you guys talk about who's taking a quarterback, and then I'll log back in.
All right. So, Paul, we've heard some of the formula here. You've got Cleveland at 1, New York, the Giants at 2, who, by all accounts, seem like they are going to stick with Eli Manning and are not.
They do, which is kind of funny because they had, of course, benched him toward the end of the season, but the news stories I've seen have said they're going to ride it out with Eli still.
Right, and they don't seem to be of a mind to take his replacement either. So, for instance, I'm looking at one website that have them taking Saquon Barkley as a guy who could help them now, a guy who could step right in and help them play. Then you have the Colts, who are going to not draft a quarterback because they believe Andrew Luck is all set and is going to be okay. Then you have the Browns again, who would not need a second quarterback.
They could try the uncommon draft a quarterback at 1 and 4 strategy and just like the Hunger Games, just whichever it makes. But that is not going to happen.
You have Denver, who needs a quarterback. You have the Jets, who need a quarterback. Then in Tampa, you have Jameis Winston, who they're 7th. They don't need a quarterback. Yep. The Bears just took a quarterback 2nd overall last year, so they don't figure to need one. The 49ers in 9 just
signed Garoppolo, the huge deal.
They don't figure to need a quarterback in the 1st round. Derek Carr and the Raiders at 10. The Dolphins at 11, they're
Yeah.
sort of wishy. Like they could be wanting to move on from Ryan Tannehill. So because this one particular one I'm looking at, they have the Dolphins taking Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma.
What about
So,
Jay Cutler, guys? What about
well,
Jay
Jay
Cutler?
what about Jay Cutler?
But what about the guy that can any of us? This is a good quiz for the three of us. Can any of the three of us remember who played against the Bills in that regular season finale?
Oh,
The
it was.
Dolphins.
Oh, he had a ridiculous name.
It was
Like Loser.
Greta Garbo.
Oh boy, that's man.
Yeah, it was Loser or something, right? It was,
It was
Lost-
some name. It was
it's
some
like
name that-
Lose Man or Lose Man. Oh wait, no,
that was us.
I'm literally having to go to the box score of this game.
I'm gonna go faster.
it was Suck, right? Or it was
Fails. David fails.
David Fails. That's what it was.
I knew it was some sort of
so good.
loser name because it was like because I was making some joke and then he started to kind of tear up. He was 29 of 42 for 265 yards.
Second half.
That's a good motto for the Dolphins. Our future fails.
Right.
That's perfect right there.
So anyway, out of the first 10 picks, you have
You got the Browns could take one. The Giants could the Browns, the
Cleveland, Denver,
and the Jets.
Is 3. But you also have to kind of figure you're not the only person who at the dance here who wants to move up. So it's not just about getting in and around those 3 teams. And you're like, oh well, if you get past those 3 teams, you're square because you have Tampa, Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland before Miami shows up. Somebody could be trying to get into that section ahead of you. So some of those teams would be like Arizona might need a quarterback depending. I don't think Baltimore quite yet needs a quarterback.
Yeah, Arizona would need a quarterback. I think Washington, you can say, oh, they just signed Alex Smith to a multi-year deal, so they are probably unlikely. But
right.
You never know. Alex Smith is not a young man anymore. They could be looking beyond him.
So anyway, yeah, there are teams that would need quarterbacks that are not just in that top 10. I think, and then of course it's not just a matter of like, you want to get the last one. Maybe you are okay with 2 or 3 out of the 6. By most metrics, there's 6 quarterbacks that are going to be taken in the first round, and they could be gone in the first 15 picks depending on who trades up for what. So that was kind of our not
right. Of course, you need to find a willing trade partner. So I think if we go with the draft value charts that Scott presented, you really are looking to move up to 5 or higher because you could easily move into 6 and 7 and not surrender all of your picks in any means, or excuse me, 5 and 6. The 5 and 6 aren't gonna. They're gonna probably. I should say probably. There's a high possibility they pick quarterbacks. So I guess you really need to get in the top 4. Is what I'm saying. And then who's your dance partner? You've only got 3 teams to trade with: Cleveland, New York, or the Colts. So which one of those is going to be willing to dance with you and
right.
to meet your needs? So.
And one of the wild cards in this is, of course, where Kirk Cousins ends up. Because if Kirk Cousins ends up in Denver or with the Jets, well, that takes them out of the running for drafting a quarterback probably because, Cousins is not a Tyrod Taylor signing. He's going to get, 5 years and gosh knows how many millions. Like you're signing your quarterback in that case. If he goes to Minnesota, which is quite possible, well, that doesn't help Buffalo at all, really, because, Minnesota's way at the back of the draft. And they're sort of, frankly, Minnesota's sort of stuck if they don't get Kirk Cousins.
Well, Minnesota's letting all of their other quarterbacks go, basically. That's what I heard, right? Is that
that's right. I think you're pretty severely Zuling, by the way, Scott.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. You're gonna have to.
We're kicking you off again.
Do it again. Sorry.
Your point, which is that they've lost all of the Minnesota, possibly in the best quarterback situation in history last year. Keenum had a year where he really stepped up to the plate. You had Bridgewater, who'd done some great things early in his career before the injury bug hit, and then you had some depth in Sam Bradford. Now they got none of those guys, so they've got to figure. Well, they've got Bridgewater, but he's still an injury risk. So you've got to figure out what you're doing if you're Minnesota. So maybe one of those guys signs where I like the fact that we have the draft before free agency before the draft nowadays, because this will inform the Bills with how they want to handle their quarterback situation or what they might need to give up. Because the best situation is, Cleveland's going to draft a quarterback with 1 or 4, so there's 1 pick. If the Jets get Cousins and say the other team I can't think of, and the Broncos get, one of the other people out there, whether it's Keenum, whether it's perhaps someone else they figure is going to lead them for a while, they're out of it. Then guess what? You can move anywhere into the top 10 you darn well please, as long as there are 2 to 3 quarterbacks in there you think you can get. So, it'll be interesting to see how free agency plays out in the quarterback market, because that's really going to shape, what the Bills might have to trade away to move up.
Let's get Scott's thoughts on this now, because he's sort of been itching to. We've sort of cut him out a bit. It's.
Sorry, Scott. It was one of those severe zools. That's why we had to jump in.
Much better now.
So what's the question?
Oh, your thoughts on, generally speaking, moving up. I mean, we feel like we sort of identified 3 teams that would definitely take quarterbacks or had the potential to take quarterbacks. You can take this wherever you'd like now. I mean, do you want to talk about
why don't we,
or whatever? Yeah, however you want to talk about it.
Okay, so why don't we talk about so I don't think the Bills are going to get Cousins. Does anyone disagree?
No, I think they're out.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I think you're dead right.
So we're out of Cousins. Anyone else is going to be a bridge to whoever we actually take in the draft at this point, correct?
Right. Yeah, right. I think they're going to have to add they're going to have to add a veteran, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be AJ McCarron. It might be,
McCarron could be one of the Minnesota guys.
What about Foles? How do we feel about Foles?
The thing with Foles is they seem to be wanting a first-round pick for him. And if I'm going to use my first-round pick, I'm going to use it on a guy who's – it's hard to say, but he looked great in the Super Bowl. He was putting the ball in places that were absolute money throws. And if that's the guy you're getting, great. If the guy you're getting is the guy who was backing up everyone for 2 years and not getting those chances, that's a lot for a first-round pick.
Okay,
I would agree with, and I like Foles too, and I think it'd be great to get him. But the problem is he's that tweener guy, because they need to add a veteran, and the next, who's going to be the next big deal guy. Is Foles going to be satisfied coming to a place where he's like, oh, hey, welcome to we're going to draft your potential replacement, even though not even a couple months ago, you were the MVP of the Super Bowl, outdueled Tom Brady, had an exceptionally good rookie season, which was not all that long ago, just 3 or 4 seasons ago, and yet we're going to relegate you in your mid to late 20s to, being the guy who grooms the next guy. I don't know if it would be the best fit. I think if they go Foles, they would have to commit on Foles, be like, Foles is our guy, we're going to sign him to a big deal, which I think the issue is they're not going to have the cap space to do that, and I think there would be some rumblings in the fan base. That's my opinion. I like Foles personally, though. If they get him, there are worse problems we've had as Bills fans.
I kind of agree. I'm in the position where it's like, if they went out and gave a first-round pick for Nick Foles, I'm not gonna light the city on fire. I could kind of see it. Now, admittedly, he's only under contract for another year, so we're basically now we'd basically kind of be in a Tyrod-esque situation where we have to kind of decide on a guy based off of 16 games and what is clearly a team kind of in transition to a certain extent, the playoff kind of victory aside, or the playoff berth kind of aside. But at the same time, if you wanted to not go that route, I would also kind of understand it, because it is a lot to put on one guy. But it is, you kind of like the idea of just signing that just to mess with Brady, kind of. I kind of want to admittedly, we don't have the receivers of the line that Philly had, but or the back. Well, we have the back, admittedly, but we don't have the line or the receivers. So there's some of that too. But I kind of like the idea just to mess with Brady. So I'm not totally ruling that out.
And if you control the Patriots, it's not a bad signing, no matter what. Not a bad trade. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also the the like good guy veteran thing, like the McDermott being, we want veterans with characters, and clearly I think Foles passes that test on some margin, vice some of the other guys who might be out there.
Yeah, he's a big family values guy and so
Yeah.
forth, and that's kind of appealed
What was
to
Sean McDermott doing in 2012? No, he was already with the Panthers by the time Nick
Okay.
Foles got to Philly the first time.
Okay, so yeah, that's very good. Thank you for checking into that.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, so now we're left with the draft quarterback question. So I think the best thing is like, based off of what you guys know, I don't know how much research you've done. Like, how would you rank the kind of 5 or 6 quarterbacks? Are there some that like you would not be willing to draft in the top 10 if you had to give up, like we're talking about, potentially, like if you want to move to, like, let's say 4, and it's both of your third round picks and both of our first round picks, or both of our firsts and one of our second rounds. Like, if that's the price you're willing to pay, is there anyone you don't want to draft based off that?
There are so many questions. I mean, you look at the one person, and again, I don't watch as much college football as you guys probably do. I liked Rosen. I could see them moving up from. I would have the same hesitation so many do about Baker Mayfield, and not so much the attitude and the personality, but like, I don't necessarily get the impression that he's going to be the guy. He could be that exceptional quarterback, but do I move up into the top 4 to pick him? I don't know. If I do, I think Lamar Jackson, his stock has fallen a bit, still looking like a potential first rounder from a lot of what I read, but not a guy I would trade up for either. Rosen, yes. Josh Allen, yes. So I think that's kind of where I land at. And then you have even players like
Sam Darnold
and Rudolph and Ferguson. Those guys I would rather see fall, because I would like to, if they pick one of those, I'd rather be with 21 or 22. But
okay.
That's
or maybe like
15,
15, 16 if you give up a third or something. Yeah.
To the extent that I watched Eddie college football, I might have watched more than Paul, but I don't remember really watching any, and I'm certain I didn't watch these guys at all. But I guess the only thing that scares me is the Josh Allen talk, because he's the quote unquote prototypical looking guy, but he's also like statistically the worst guy. Like, and I think he plays for Wyoming, right? So it's not the same as a lot of other programs where, he's not facing the same sort of defenses. I believe he was the one who said like stats are for losers when he was, he strikes me as the most, bustable guy. He's got all he's got the big arm.
Yes.
Which I feel like every year we got to hear about the guy with the big arm, and that guy with the big arm, routinely like throws from his knees and then like does nothing because he just can't play football. So to that extent, I mean, he's really the only guy that I'm sort of super wary of. Sam Darnold, I haven't even entertained the thought because he's just going first overall in so many drafts that I think the Bills would be happy to have him, but I can't envision it. Josh Rosen is probably the guy I want first. I think he has the best complement of, he's got things like completion percentage. He kind of looks like the quarterback. He's got some of the physical traits, but he also has some of the pedigree. I understand that it's kind of crazy that the fact that he has a podcast and has opinions on things may in fact, put some coaches and front offices off, which I think is both hilarious and awful. I would hope that, the Bills, personally, I would hope the Bills would be a little better than that. But you never know. And then on the flip side, you have Baker Mayfield, who sort of has, distraction issues written all over him for the other reason. And I sort of don't believe in any of his nonsense either. I think by one metric, he was the most accurate quarterback, which I don't know if that's because, he has great wide receivers or whatnot. But I like the fact that apparently, at least on one level, he had the best completion percentage. Rudolph and Jackson, I guess I don't know. I'm literally going off a scuttlebutt here. And my feeling on them is that, Jackson's down year last year after his Heisman year could really, be demonstrative of what might happen in the next year. I was glad he pushed back when somebody asked him if he'd be willing to play wide receiver or tight end. I think that's a pretty insulting question. um, and Mason Rudolph, um, again, from everything I've heard, is a guy who, could do well and might be there in the 20s and could be a good option for a guy if you don't really want to, trade your draft picks, but isn't going to come with the same percentage level of panning out that, the Rosen and the Darnold might. Does that sound
Yeah.
reasonable? Or?
Okay. No, that's fair. So you're basically saying you would not trade up for Allen Jackson or
Yeah, I don't
Rudolph.
want Allen at all, and I wouldn't trade up for Rudolph or Jackson. I think
Okay.
those guys I'd be happy taking in the 20s or, high teens.
Okay. No, that's fine. So yeah, no, I mean, I think you guys are on track because I am the correct person who knows the answer to this
Right.
question.
That's obvious.
So yeah, no, I mean, I think Allen, you're right. I think Allen's a stay away. I'm not sure I'd draft him in the first round if I was the Bills. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. I have seen him do some completely. He reminds me a lot of Mike Vick, and Mike Vick was a very good quarterback. Period. But he also did not. He did not win a Super Bowl. He was not on Super Bowl teams, if I recall. He got into the playoffs, and I remember he beat Green Bay in Green Bay, and he could be a very good quarterback, but I'm not sure he's going to be like the guy who gets you to where you need to be. And just, he obviously has a somewhat different playing style than Tyrod, but in some ways they are similar in terms of they have, a run game aspect to their thing. They're both pretty decent, good ball, deep ball throwers, but have problems with mechanics and accuracy in the kind of short and intermediate games. So it seems unlikely that the Bills would go that route as well. Mayfield, I do like. It's tough because like I want to. Part of me wants to say that Mayfield and Rudolph, they've been compared because obviously they're Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. They've been playing each other for 3 or 4 years now, practically. And so they've had similar careers. Mayfield has been a bit more successful. Oklahoma's been a slightly better team during that time period, but they've actually both put up similar kind of stat lines. Part of me likes Mayfield because he has been on the better teams, which is not really a reason. It's because Mayfield has won more of those, but it's probably not really how that works, and it's not good drafting to do it that way. I'm not sure. That said, I'm not sure that Mayfield is like a top 10 pick the same way that Darnold and Rosen are. So, maybe Mayfield's ahead of Rudolph in my book, but he's not ahead by a lot, probably, is the correct way to view it. And so if either one of them fell to the Bills at 21 or 22, or they were hanging around, or if the run on quarterbacks happened and they were dropping to 15, 16, then I'd be okay with trading up a little bit to get either one of those guys. Though, again, Mayfield seems like McDermott and Bean are going to just kind of see the crotch grab and call it a day on Mayfield. Like they clearly can't handle that kind of stuff. So then, yeah, it kind of comes down to Darnold and Rosen, who have the kind of the perfect resumes, kind of, both kind of Pac-12 kind of throw it around quarterbacks with, good accuracy, good long ball, natural kind of pocket passers with a bit of mobility, have the kind of take charge attitude and kind of born to be quarterback kind of pedigree, like Frank was saying. So I think both of those guys. So it really comes down to where the draft, how the draft and free agency kind of plays out. I think I would be fine giving up going to 4 for either of those guys, like giving up kind of, because that's the thing. There are enough holes on this Bills team, this playoff appearance notwithstanding, to make me want to still get another pick in the first 3 rounds. I don't think we can just give all of our picks to the Giants and go to 2 and get our either get Rosen or Darnold or get our choice of them if they don't take if they take Barkley first. So I feel like I kind of want to still hold on to one of those, just because also neither one of these guys is like Darnold has had a bit of a problem with turnovers. Rosen's a bit, he's a little younger and he hasn't quite been tested in some of the big stages that Darnold has. Like Darnold's played in the Rose Bowl. Obviously, Rosen plays in the Rose Bowl as his home stadium, but he has not played in like big national championship level games. So I'm a little more worried about that with him. But it's not like you can't really hold him just because UCLA was terrible. You can't really hold that against him. So I'm okay moving to 4. That lets you at least hold on to either your other first round pick, or some combination of second and third round picks, theoretically, if you're going just by the value. But Paul did make a really good point that obviously, like, other people are going to want to trade up, and whoever is in that position may not want to trade out just for the buy rights draft value chart because they feel like either they got to take a quarterback or they got to take somebody else. So
Right.
if we can squeeze in there at 4, and we might. That's the thing. You'll know by the time the draft happens. Either if Rosen or Darnold is there at 4, yeah, if I'm the Bills, I'm making the call and I'm putting together a pretty strong offer. I'd still like a pick on day 2, but if I don't get it, I mean that's the thing. It seems at this point the Bills are pretty much sold. Like they short of like them deciding they want to go the Foles route, they got to get the number 1 quarterback this offseason. So it seems like they're going to do it regardless. I'm not sure that's a great idea, but ultimately, like if you feel like you have to get him, I guess you have to get him. So I'm done.
Wunderbar. Yeah, very, very well done. That's why we have you here, because you're the college guy.
Right. It puts our knowledge to shame on that one for sure.
Yes.
It's an interesting QB class this year. I enjoyed watching some of these. Like I saw a little of Josh Allen, and again, like I saw Josh Allen against Iowa, and he didn't do anything. And Iowa's a good team, but like they had like Josh Jackson's a good first round probably draft pick, and Josie Jewell's probably a good second round linebacker guy, but they're not. It's not like the freaking Alabama defense that he was going against, and he didn't do shit. So Josh Allen, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and I'll take Scott's word for it there. I think one thing, and I know we've moved on from the free agent QB portion of the discussion, but something we've all kind of assumed, which is going to be a huge game changer on the market if it doesn't come to fruition, is everyone's thinking, oh, Drew Brees is going to go back to the Saints, no problem at all. We're down to 15 hours now where the Saints have exclusive negotiating rights, and I haven't heard anything, and most of Twitter hasn't heard anything at all about whether that's happening. So if
I heard there was. I'm going to look it up while you're talking because I think you're right, but I think there was a weird Drew Brees rule in his contract. But we didn't really, and we talked about Minnesota. I mean, if Case Keenum or Teddy Bridgewater are available, is that the kind? Are those guys also? Do you throw them in the AJ McCarron camp, or do you
look at I think so, and there's a good list. And darn it, if I didn't just close it on my phone, but it ranks all the 20 available free agents, and it was McCarron, Bridgewater, Bradford, all of the 2.5 star variety, and it was Keenum was 3 stars, Cousins was 3.5, and Brees was like 4.5, even though he's only got probably a couple of years left. So. But yeah, and I think McCown would fall into that group of a 2.5-year guy. The fact that, I was really upset when he was beating the Bills on Thursday night in that game we all watched together and thought, boy, this is ridiculous to let McCown do this. But he is a totally serviceable player, and he showed that in the game against the Bills. He led a Jets team to 5 wins. It was probably talented enough to win 2 games, and yet he helped lead that. So you have some of those, and I think it's a good way to put 2.5-star QBs who are on the market. And I'm fine with them getting one of those because when you think about it, really, where's Tyrod on that list? He's probably would be considered maybe a 3-star QB, so it's a slight downgrade to those guys, but it's not such a downgrade that it should necessarily throw the team totally off what it was able to accomplish on offense in 2017.
You know what I'm reading now is that there was an issue where they thought his contract was going to void, which meant he couldn't partake in the 48-hour talk to other team pre-tampering period, which if we could just think about how that's a ridiculous phrase for a minute.
I know that. But as a lawyer, you've got to be like, okay, legal tampering. All right, I'll find out. That's my legal murder category.
It's just called that for the juice, because it sounds so sexy and great. But no, that report I had glanced at a few days ago was just, as it turns out, wrong. And he is allowed to partake. And so here on Sunday night, as we go into tomorrow, he very well, through his agent, could be talking to other teams and getting offers. I think the Bills are in a spot, though. Like, even if you wanted Cousins, or Drew Brees, you can't really afford him.
No, no.
The way their cap's all set up, and so you kind of have to, you're gonna have to, kind of go with a younger guy or an unproven guy. I think you could get a guy like a Teddy Bridgewater or a AJ McCarron if you thought that there was something in the tank there. But at that point, I'm happy, drafting a guy personally.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think that's inevitably the Bills are going to have. I would be shocked they drafted QB. Scott did make one point I wanted to go back to because I thought it was pretty accurate. I also don't want the Bills trading everyone to get that quarterback because they've got 51 players under contract, 32 have played an NFL game. They need to fill this roster up with some talent because they're thin, really thin at receiver. They don't have a lot of depth at tight end. Their offensive line has some question marks on it. Their defensive pass rush was terrible. Their defensive tackles who both left. Their linebacking situation is a mess. They can still use another quarterback. So with all those needs and not being able to get them in free agency, the Bills do have to be very careful to, don't be afraid to give up, your first round picks, maybe a second round pick, or even heck a third round pick with that. But keep one of those second rounders, keep one of those third rounders. You got some other holes you got to worry
about. Yes, absolutely. I don't mean to just shuffle off your point there because I'm now catching wind of this. It's semi-related to Bills. People are sending me things about
Jake Arrieta signing with the Phillies? Because I'm happy to discuss that for 10 minutes and how that affects our lives.
Jake Arrieta care. Yeah, welcome to Nats 102. No, people are sending me stuff about this OJ special that's airing on Fox right now. Like the lost tapes where he may or may not have confessed.
I heard jokes that it's kind of funny that they found these right around the time American Idol was debuting on a new network.
Right.
That was exactly when Fox found these.
Remember because he had written this book or something too. I don't know. Anyway. I don't want to go down that. Do we have anything else? Was there a this day in Bills history? I'm not if I'm putting you on the spot. Please don't.
I'm not this week. This week there wasn't really anything this day-ish worthy. So I looked at the list and thought, it'd just be filler today. So nothing of note on March 11th. Per the website I secretly accessed to look for this news.
Okay. Well, Scott had to go. Oh, he's back. Very good. Okay, good. So we can. I was pretty much just going to wrap up then because I feel like we've talked about what there is to talk about, and then as free agency will happen next week, and we'll if we don't come back straight away next week, certainly within the next week or two, we'll do another podcast, and then we'll be halfway to the draft, and then we'll have a final look at the draft, and maybe we'll be talking about crazy draft. But I think we're done for tonight. So thank you all for listening. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BBillsMNY. Go to Twitter, BBillsMNY. You can Google us. You can search for Buffalo Bills podcast, or just, type Buffalo Bills maybe next year, or maybe next year into a podcast search engine and just add us. That'd be great. You can go to our blog, bbillsmny.wordpress.com, which I'm actually going to just stop advertising at this point, since we may eventually switch to a different podcast host, and then we're never going to do anything there. But Facebook and Twitter are great places to get a hold of us. You can certainly email us, bbillsmny@gmail.com. Let us know what you think is going on. Get in, join the conversation. But until then, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed our little pop-up episode here, and we will talk to you very soon. Until then, I'm Frank.
I'm Paul.
All right. Good night, everyone.